Thank you, Julie. Now I'd like to introduce you to Rita Franco. Rita is our Director of Financial Aid here at Humphreys University.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today to, well, first of all, thank you for being here. And I'd like to welcome you. And I'm going to introduce you to a little portion of the world of financial aid at Humphreys University. So what we do, and this is a very special service that we do for our students, from the very beginning that you contact the admissions office, if you have absolutely any issues or any concerns, or you're a little reluctant, you've just never really dealt with financial aid, or you have in the past and it was a scary experience, you didn't really know what was going on. Well, we have a staff, a wonderful staff through the Student Services Department that will reach out to you immediately and start holding your hand. And what I'd like to do from here on is kind of explain to you a little bit about how the application process is worked at Humphreys University. So the first thing we ask is our students to complete the FAFSA. So that's the free application for federal student aid. And it is the application that is used here in the United States as the secure method to apply for financial aid. So what is financial aid? A lot of people think, oh, I don't qualify for financial aid. I hear that so often. That's not necessarily correct. Financial aid is consists of grants, which you do not have to pay back. They could be federal or state. It also consists of loans, federal loans. They could be loans for you, the student. It could be for your parent. If you're a graduate student, you can get some extra graduate money through a parent, like a variety of types of awards that are available to you. And students think, well, loans are not financial aid. Yes, they are, because they are guaranteed through the federal government. You probably at 18 years old would not be able to get a loan to go to school if it wasn't for the Department of Education, these programs. There are scholarships through private sources. We have institutional scholarships as well. So through all those sources of aid, there's a very good chance that you'll be able to secure probably 100% of your $14,580 of undergraduate tuition, or your JD tuition, or your graduate tuition, which would be lower than that. So what you first do, like I said, you go, we're going to help you, or if you are comfortable enough, you go out to the FAFSA website. And don't be fooled, you want to use this website that's the federal government. It is free. That's why it's a free application for federal student aid. In the past, I try to check today, but in the past, there were students that we would assist and they'd say, oh, I already did the FAFSA, and we'd be checking and checking. Well, what they had done is they had gone through the FAFSA.com website where they had paid like $89.99. And it's just a process where you supply your information, they're a third-party servicer, and then you agree for them to just fill out the FAFSA for you. So be careful, and it's through the FAFSA.gov website. There's also the student aid website, which has so much information out there about financial aid, which could be a little intimidating, but it is very useful. So what does the FAFSA do? It is going to gather your taxed income, most untaxed income, your assets, not included your home, but all of their assets, and your number in college. So that information is then computed through what's called the federal methodology, and the FAFSA then determines what we know as your expected family contribution. That expected family contribution means to us a lot in financial aid, because we take that number and then we are able to put together an award package, and that award package will consist, if you qualify, of grant money, federal and or state, and loan money, scholarship money as well, and then we'll be able to present that to you, and you can decide whether or not what we can offer you is sufficient for you to cover expenses. Some students need extra money for transportation, for living. So we will award you up to what we call the cost of attendance, which is not just your tuition. It includes living and books, transportation, and other expenses. So a lot of students are not just receiving aid for tuition, they're receiving aid for expenses required in order for them to sustain while they're in college. So once you get to the FAFSA website, you start collecting that information, and it computes the EFC number. Then your school, which us, if you come to us, will put that package together. What I want to emphasize as well is that you have to fill out the FAFSA annually. And as far as the deadline, the federal government does not impose a deadline. So if you are planning on attending next quarter, you can fill out a FAFSA now, and we could still give you a really good idea in a week or so of how much your aid would be if you were to consider attending in the fall quarter. Now, applying now for the FAFSA, you would be applying for the 2021 FAFSA, and that FAFSA, the effective dates are July of 2020 through June 30th of 2021. Now, you have to fill out a FAFSA annually. So if you fill it out now, then you have missed the deadline for the Cal Grant. The Cal Grant deadline for the 2021 year was March 2nd of 2020. So that's okay if you missed the deadline. We're here to assist you so that by March 2nd of 2021, you are sure to apply for all aid that is available in California and that we can offer you. Since we're WASC accredited, all of our programs are WASC accredited, we are able to offer federal aid, all the federal aid that's available pretty much, and we're also eligible for state aid, so we can also offer you Cal Grant money as well if you qualify. Now, the FAFSA is going to determine your eligibility by that EFC number that I mentioned, and what are the programs underneath the FAFSA are going to be the Pell Grant, which is a grant program by the federal government. The 2021 award is $6,345. That award is available to students that the federal government considers of exceptional need. So if you have what we call a zero EFC, then you are eligible for $6,345 of free money that you do not have to pay back. On top of that, the FAFSA will also determine your eligibility for federal work study. We do have jobs on campus. Oddly enough, we've had a difficult time filling work study positions because students seem to be, everyone's working now. So I just want everyone to know that we do have that program available, and it is on campus and off campus. We also have the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. That's a campus-based program as well as a federal work study program. There isn't a whole big chunk of money for that. We award up to $500 a quarter for up to an academic year of 3 quarters, so it's $1,500. And what we do is always make our new students, give them priority. So at least at one time or another during your time at Humphreys University, you hopefully will have an FSEOG grant. On top of that, we have the student loans, and student loans, a lot of people are very leery of them, but they are an investment in your future. Sometimes there is no other way to finance your education without the means of federal student loans. They are not bad. The interest rates are very competitive. For this year, an undergraduate student would pay an interest rate of 2.75%. It is fixed for the life of the loan. And if you have a need, and most students do have a need for subsidized funding, the government pays the interest on that loan for you during the entire time that you're in school, whether that be 2 years, 4 years, or 8 years. So that's basically interest-free while you're in school. And all of these loans have a 6-month grace period. So during that grace period, you do not have to make any payments, and the repayment kicks in, well, hopefully when you graduate. But if you don't graduate, if you decide to take some time off, Repayment begins 6 months from the time that you drop to below half-time enrollment status. These programs do require you to be at least a half-time student. So depending on your academic level, if you're an undergraduate student, you'd have to take at least 6 to 8 units. If you're a graduate student, you'd have to be at least half-time, which is 4 units. And if you're in law school, you'd have to take 6 units in order to be eligible for student loans. I have to mention that grant money is only available to undergraduate students and to students in the teaching credential program. Loans are the only means of financial assistance for students in graduate programs. So if you're not an undergraduate student, you would not be eligible for grants. That would cover federal and state grants. But if you're an undergraduate student, you have a variety of options to choose from. I want to cover a little bit about Cal Grant because Cal Grant is it's a big program in the state of California. The state of California, a criteria of the Cal Grant is merit. Unlike the FAFSA, all it's collecting is income. It's not collecting anything about your academic merits. So if you have a need for federal aid, it's just based on your income, your assets, and your household size. For Cal Grant, there's an additional form that's required. It's called a GPA verification form. And a school official must verify either college GPA or high school. And under the Cal Grant program, there are 2 types of programs. There's the entitlement program, and then there's the competitive program. So if you just graduated from high school, if you're going to graduate from high school, it's a really easy process because your high school is required to report your GPA, and I believe it's by October. So at least that part is done for you. If you're not in high school, then to apply for the Cal Grant, first of all, everyone has to fill out the correct FAFSA. So that FAFSA needs to be done by the student, and it has to be done by March the 2nd in order to qualify for a Cal Grant. And that is March the 2nd prior to the award year that the student's going to be attending school. The entitlement program is for, it's geared for students that are in high school or that recently graduated from high school. To qualify for a Cal Grant, all you have to have is a 2.0, and you do have to meet the income ceilings under the state of California, which are much higher than the federal calculation for grant aid. So you can get a Cal Grant and possibly not be eligible for Pell Grant because your income could be higher for Cal Grant eligibility. A Cal Grant A, which is the same under the competitive, where a competitive grant is someone that's no longer in high school that has to compete for the Cal Grant award. They're looking for a 3.0 generally. For the Cal Grant B, a 2.0, and for the Cal Grant C is basically for a student that is only thinking about a 2-year program. The Cal Grant A, for us, our type of school, pays up to $9,084 an academic year, which is 3 quarters. So if you just do the math, $9,084 plus $6,345 of a Pell Grant will definitely cover your tuition as an undergraduate student of $14,580. The Cal Grant B starts off at a lower award, but then it mirrors the Cal Grant A in the 2nd year. Once you get a Cal Grant award, you do not have to compete again for it. You're in that program for a period of up to 12 quarters or 4 academic years. You do have to continuously complete the FAFSA annually. That's something that students kind of forget, that they complete it the first year, everything's going well, they go through the financial aid process, but then they forget that they have to fill out the FAFSA again. Your aid must be renewed annually. We at Humphreys University, as Santa explained, we are year-round, so we will be able to fund you year-round. There is financial aid for you year-round. We're a borrower-based institution, so we're not a traditional school where you have to be off during the summer or your aid is very limited during the summer. We will offer you the same amount of aid during the summer that we would offer you during the fall, winter, or spring quarters. So a little bit more about student loans, because that is the main source of aid for graduate students. students that are only going to be eligible for student loans will be, as I said, the graduate students, and their interest rate for the 2020-21 year is 4.3%. So it is at a very, very good rate this year. I haven't seen these rates in a long time. The rates have been continuously going up in the past few years. Because of what's happening, the rates did go down. I want to reemphasize these rates are fixed, they're not variable. Next year the rate might be lower or it might be higher, but it will be fixed for the life of your loan. So that's very important. These loans are also available to parents. So for those students that have very limited grant eligibility or that don't qualify at all, the student can get student loans, and the parents can also get parent loans. It's a little different for the parent. The parent does have to be taken through a process. It's somewhat like a credit check, but not an entire credit check. But what the student's being looked at is to make sure that they do not have adverse credit history. So they can qualify without no credit history, but they can't have adverse credit history. The interest rate for that is also 4.30, and that's a very competitive rate as well. And it is fixed, and the overall amount that a student can borrow, that is, I didn't talk that much about dependency because that can get tricky, but if you're an independent student, you can borrow up to $57,500 of subsidized and unsubsidized money. Unsubsidized is the same as the subsidized, except that the government does not pay the interest for you while you're in school. So that loan is accruing interest while you're in school and during repayment. A dependent student can only borrow $31,000, and that's because the government expects the parent to assist somewhat with parent loan funding, and that's why the dependent undergraduate student can only borrow $31,000. We don't want those dependents leaving school with a huge debt, so that's why they're limited. The graduate student, and by the way, a graduate student, it doesn't matter their age, once they're accepted into a graduate program, they are considered a graduate student. They can borrow up to $20,500 a year, which is more than enough for any of our graduate programs on an annual basis. And they can borrow a maximum aggregate of $138,500. I want to make sure that students understand that. It does include what they borrowed as an undergraduate student, but that's quite enough for our students. Students do not need to borrow that much. And lastly, in terms of student loans, the repayment options are very, very flexible. Most students enter repayment on an income-based payment plan. There are a variety of them, but in the last few years, they have really, really expanded the income-based repayment plan. So in the beginning, when a student may not be making exactly what they hope to make, their payment will be lower. Once they start to make more, that payment can increase. They can switch around payment plans. They can go to a standard repayment plan. And some of these student loans could also qualify for the public loan forgiveness program. Many of our law students take advantage of that. Once they graduate, they work for the public sector or for nonprofit, and you can get a lot of your debt forgiven. There are some conditions, of course, and requirements. You can't just apply and then expect your loans to be fully forgiven. You have to make a certain amount of payments for a certain amount of years, continue to work for that type of an employer, and eventually, yes, you can have quite a large amount of your loans forgiven. Lastly, we have been seeing an increase in private loan funding. Some students have just decided that they don't want to worry about FAFSA. It's too much trouble for them. They might be dependent and they don't want parents involved. So that's something that students do on their own. you're not really going to be able to find a 2.75 interest rate on a private student loan, but those are out there, and I'd like to make sure that I mention that. They are all credit-based, so someone that just recently graduated from high school, it's going to be very difficult to get a private student loan. In the financial aid world, we always want to provide the student with the most beneficial type of funding, and that's going to be free money, first of all. Then low interest loans, we want to do the subsidized loan first, then introduce the student to the unsubsidized funding and parent loan funding if that is the necessity in the situation. Just want to make sure that everyone understands that we do have aid offered to students all year round. We are here to basically hold your hand from the beginning of the process. We reach out to you right now by email, but when we were on campus and eventually when we do return on campus, we have quite a few students that are always, may make friends with us. We really enjoy our student contact right now. It's not possible, but we are doing our best to reach out to you and to help you the best way possible. Lastly, we have an institutional aid. It's called the Freshman Scholarship Program. It is limited to students that recently graduated from high school. There are some conditions to it, of course. You do have to be the recipient of a Cal Grant Award. If you meet the eligibility criteria, then and you qualify for the Freshman Scholarship Award, basically it's a way for you to get through college debt-free. You would not need to consider student loans ever. It is a way for us to, we will cover any expenses in terms of tuition not covered by your financial aid. So it's a wonderful opportunity for those students that just graduated from high school. Good thing is there is no deadline. You can apply the day before the fall quarter starts. And if you meet the requirements, you are eligible for the freshman scholarship. We also provide a $1,000 book scholarship to those students. I encourage everyone out there to promote the freshman scholarship program. And if you have any friends that are just graduating from high school, let them know that Humphreys University has this program. It's wonderful. If you just have a Cal Grant and it's a minimal Cal Grant, we will cover the balance of your tuition. And lastly, I have a staff that I work with. They are the student account specialists, and once your application for admission is approved, then what we do is we immediately assign you a student account specialist. That person will follow you through the financial aid process, the billing process from day one to help you understand your financial aid, your requirements. Every year say, hey, apply for a Cal Grant. Every quarter tell you this is how much aid you have coming. We don't want you to accept any aid before you understand it. The worst thing is for you to think that all your aid might be a grant loan. I've heard that. There is no such thing as a grant loan. So we are here to help you through the process. You could be assigned to either Chia Zong, Mai Zong, or Linda Castile. And they're there for you. Take advantage of their assistance. They're very knowledgeable in terms of helping you with your financial aid portal, with the FAFSA, with understanding your Cal Grant Award, your loan awards. They will make sure that you understand that you might be borrowing too much, that you may not need that much, or help you understand what your out-of-pocket expense, if that might be the case. Maybe you don't want to borrow, you only want to take your grant money. We can help you with all of that. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope I haven't bored you too much, and we are here to help you. Thank you.
Rita, for some reason I lost connection for maybe a couple of minutes. Did anybody else in the middle of her high school her high school scholarship, which is really important? So I don't know. I was just emailing or texting Amit, but just kind of, I just want to reiterate that there is a high school scholarship that pays up to 4 years. if they have the Cal Grant A or B or the entitlement. And this way they will not have to incur any student loan debt. So I missed that part, and I'm hoping that the viewers didn't, if they did miss it, I just wanted to reiterate that.
You are correct, Santa. It is for students that have just graduated from high school, and it is up to a 4-year scholarship. Yes, a student just has to complete the FAFSA annually. And as I said earlier, once a student is awarded a Cal Grant, they do not have to reapply for it. They're in that program until they exhaust their eligibility. And it's typically up to 12 quarters, or what we typically know it as a 4-year Cal Grant award.
Thank you, Rita.
Okay.
Just as a piece of information, everyone who is speaking today, if you go to our Humphreys homepage, they are listed under our staff and faculty directory, where you can access their emails and contact them directly.